Welcome, Mark.
Hello, everyone. How are you folks doing today?
We are really fine. How are you? How is your day going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm over in Chicago, so it's still early in the morning for me.
Yes, I think it's 10 p.m., right? AM,
10 a.m.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but in the Turkey, we like 7 p.m. It's a little bit late. If you're ready, you can share your presentation, by the way.
Okay,
And thank you
wonderful.
for coming, GDG Turkey, the FEST 2020. And let me introduce you in Turkish. Then you can start. Evet arkadaşlar, Google'da çalışan Mark Thompson bugün bizimle olacak. Thompson. Did I say right? Thompson. Great.
Perfect.
Herhangi bir sorunuz olduğunda Türkçe olarak sorabilirsiniz. İngilizceye çevireceğiz. Sunum tabii ki de İngilizce olacak. Sorunuz olursa sormaktan çekinmeyin. Elimizden geleni yapacağız. Okay, Mark. Thank you again for coming our event. If you're ready, you can start.
Okay, first and foremost, I want to say a huge thank you to you folks for having me today. Thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for just being so kind and inviting me. I am so excited to be here. We're going to have a really good time. Before we start with anything, here's what I want you to do. If you can put your left hand up, because guess what? That's me giving you a high five because you're so awesome. Okay, so today's talk is called Angular and the Supercharged CLI. My name is Mark, and I'm on the Angular team at Google. I'm a developer advocate. So a little bit about me, though, is that I love to code and to teach. That are my two favorite things to do. And if I could have a dream job outside of working at Google, it would probably to be a model, something so I can just stand there and people can take pictures of me. Okay, let's jump in. So let's talk about Angular and what is even Angular. So here's how I like to describe Angular. Well, Angular is a platform for building scalable applications. So as your applications grow, whether you're starting out with a smaller application or you're building a big application, Angular grows and scales with you. And let me tell you why some of the reasons I actually really like Angular. One, we have some really great integrated tooling. So whether you're using something like VS Code, we have some plugins that really make your development productivity really high, as well as the support that we have with the command line tools that we'll talk about today, and so much more. Then Angular is all about best practices from the start. We are what we call a batteries included platform, meaning that we want to reduce the amount of decisions that you need to make so you can just focus on building your great application. For example, we come with routing built in. We come with the prescription for some of the other choices, things like animation, etc. So we come with decisions built in with best practices in mind. Now, here's my favorite part about this entire thing. The power of the community. We build Angular together. That's right. So the team at Google, we make pull requests to GitHub just like you do. And we all drive the future of Angular together. Now, let me tell you a story. This is my kid, the heir. This is my son. I call him the heir because he's the heir to the Thompson fortune. That's not quite there yet, but we're still working on it. And something interesting happened. He asked me a question and he said, hey, Dad, can you make a cool app to help people find food pantries? Now, a food pantry is a place where you can go and get food for your family if you need help. And I'm thinking like, wow, kid, you're only 3 years old and this is what you want me to do? So I thought about it and I said, you know what? I have an idea. Here's what we can make. So I came up with this idea for an app called Helpers. And what the Helpers app is going to do is allow us to see locations for food pantries. And then we can click on one of them and then see the details for that food pantry. Looking at this application, though, well, how would we make this? How would we get started? Well, the answer to this question, how we approach this, here's the answer. Well, you're going to want to use components. In Angular, components are the fundamental building blocks that we use to build our UI. So if you think about your application as a series of blocks stacked onto each other, they build something great, or a component would be the smallest, most fundamental part of that. And in Angular, components have three parts. You have TypeScript, where you enter your business logic. You have CSS, this is where you do your styles. How will your component look on screen? And then you have HTML, which is going to be the structure of your component. Okay, so let's look at our application and let's try to break it down. We have probably the outer container application. So let's say we call this one, the one that's highlighted in blue. This is like our outer application. Okay, our outer component. Then in green, we have a list of the locations. Next up, we have an individual item, so individual component that represents one of the locations themselves. And then finally, I think we have this one, which is maybe the details panel. Okay, so we can see the details for our application. So to build this, we're going to use the CLI. Now, a CLI is the command line interface, and that allows you to issue commands and actions into your terminal of your computer, your command line, and then those actions will happen, like creating files, doing other things. CLIs are very, very popular. They're so popular that even GitHub itself has a CLI. Their CLI just reached the 1.0 release recently, so it's great to have these tools to help boost your developer productivity. Here's how we get started with everything, because I know you're ready for this action. So here we go. Here's how we get started. First, you need to install the Angular CLI. We use a tool like npm, or you can use Yarn. You do npm install -g for global, and then Angular/CLI. The reason we do -g for global here is so that way you can run the Angular CLI from any place on your computer. Okay. Once you do that, you get access to the ng command. So this ng command will let you run the different actions that we're going to need. So let's look at the first action that we have to do. The first action would be ng new helpers app. And let me show you what that creates for us. So I'm in VS Code. And in VS Code here, this is the default project that gets created. All right, so we have our default project, which comes with, let's have a look. It comes with some components already made for us, but that's not enough. There is something more that we can do here. We're going to go into the terminal here. And what I want to show you now is the next CLI tool. So I'll do ng serve. Here's what this is going to do for us. ng serve is going to open up our development server on our machine with live reload already enabled. So as your changes happen in your application, you'll see them on the browser automatically. So it's going to do our compilation step for us to make sure that all of our parts are compiled. And once that's done, it's going to give us a message that lets us know that it's ready for us to view. Okay, just as we saw, it says our live development server is listening on localhost 4200. Let's look and see what that looks like. Okay, I'm in the browser, localhost 4200. Here, I want you to be able to see that. Okay, and then I'm going to hit refresh. All right, here is the default. This is what you're going to get from default. Okay, it's just going to be our standard application that gives you just some directions, some apps, but we don't need this because we have our own application to build. So let's get in. Okay, we're back to the application part. Let's dive into how we'll do this. First, let's make this part of the application. Remember, we talked about an outer application here, the outer part. Let's make that. So to go back, I'm going to go to the app.html, the app component.html. We have some default code here. I'm going to throw that all out. But here's where it's going to get really interesting. I'm going to just start typing some code here. So this is main. And this is going to be all HTML that I'm typing. So you can use your existing HTML skills here. And I'm going to do a section. Okay, so then the header, I probably want something that says hello world, just to make sure that it's working. And let's look. Okay, I didn't refresh. I just went back here. And then this is what we have. Now, let's start adding in some special stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to add in our actual helpers header. So we're going to add the header. Now, this header has our helpers, and then this SVG code here, this is just an image that we have. This is just an image, nothing fancy. There's no business logic. But let me also add in some styles. So I need to add in styles in two places. I have my global styles that I like to use. Okay, so these are just global styles for my application. And then I'm going to add my component styles. So my component is going to have its own styles that will be used just for this component. So I did all this beforehand. And the reason I did that is to just save us some time so you didn't have to see me Googling and going to CSS tricks to figure out how to make this thing work. All right, so now we have our component styled and everything looks pretty good. So that's the first part. Now let's go into the next part. This list, I want this to be a component, okay? So I want this to be a component for the list. So how would I do that? So let's go back to the main app component. And down in this section, I'm going to put some stuff here for us. So first things first, let's put in our, let's do this. Let's make sure that we have in our component class. So here's our component class. And this is TypeScript. Okay? And TypeScript is just a subset of JavaScript. So you can use newer JavaScript features now in TypeScript. And you get the value of a strongly typed language, which is going to help you to find errors as they're happening before you run your applications. All right. So inside here, we're just going to put our array with our location data. So that's what this is. This is just our array with some location data so we can have something to show on the screen. So now I'm going to go back. I want to show that on the screen. So I'll start with just a UL, and then we'll do an LI. But in this LI, here's what I really want to do. I want to do an ng4, and this is to do a for loop so I can repeat the element over and over again. I'm going to say let fbank of food bank. Now, if you see, this is where some of the tooling really comes into play. The food banks is exactly what we defined in our component class. How excellent is that? So even in HTML, I can see this. Now, I'm going to use some interpolation. So this is going to say the double curlies is going to put the text from the value of my expression onto my page. Let's do that step now. So we say we want the food bank. Let's just say .name. Okay, so let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. Oh, look at that. Get that hand back up again. Another high five because you're doing great. So we have our list, but that's not exactly the way that we designed it. We can do better, and let's do it. So instead of doing it as an LI, let's make it fancy because we really want to make this app look great. So we'll go into our list. Okay. So now that we have that, let's get into our food bank location component. So if you see what's happening here, let me scroll to view. Here's what's happening on line 18. If you see there's an error because this component does not exist. But we can fix that, can't we? So let's go into our terminal. I'm going to open up another window in my terminal. And I'm going to use the CLI to help make this work for me. So I'm going to do ng generate, which is going to be to create. What do I want to create? Well, I want to create a component. And then in our component, what do I want to call it? Well, I want to call it food bank location. Now, if you're not sure what's going to happen when you do a command like this, we have a really incredible flag called dry run. Let me show you what that does. Now this dry run flag says, okay, it's going to preview what the steps were, but this component was not created. This is a preview to make sure that the location is correct, the file names are correct, and is doing what you expected. How fun is that? This looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and do this step. How fun. Now we're very close, but we still have an error that we'll need to work on, but we're very, very close. So let's jump into this component. Now I'm on Mac, so I'm going to control click and go to definition. And then it takes me right into my component class here. So I have my component class. And the thing that it was asking me for in the last window, it was asking me for the details input. So this is how we send data into a component. So if you have a component, so right now we're working on our little location, we want to get those details inside the component. Well, we want to send it in. So here's how you send it in. You use an input in Angular. So to do an input, we're going to say, yeah, let's define an input. So we import the input. And then inside we say we got input. And this one was called, let's make sure we got the right name, details. So we want the details. Okay, we save that and we go back to our, all right, now we're working the way that we want. So everything should be moving smoothly for us. Okay. So we have our import. All right, so we should be, so let's go inside here. So I'm going to go to the definition. And then the other thing that I want to look at is I want to bring in my class, my styles. So I have some styles here. So we're going to bring in our helpers component styles. Okay, just some component styles that we have. Looks good. Okay, now that we have that working, we have our styles. We can go into our component HTML. And I want to make sure that this is saying food bank location works. So let's make sure that this is working on the screen. So right now you can't see anything. Neither can I. So let's figure out what's probably happening here. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I have the right setup. So I'm going to go back one level. And remember, this is VS Code, so I'm just taking advantage of the VS Code features. I'm going to go back a level to make sure that I have the setup that I'm supposed to have here. Okay, so here's what we need. Okay, I think I know what's going on, folks. Let me just make sure that I have all my parts. So this is real time. I'm trying to get my code to show up on the screen. So I want to update this in real time, make sure that it's working. So I must have missed something, and we're going to figure this out. Okay, so while we're doing that, let's make sure we understand what's happening. I have my ng4 here, which is going to be my for loop. Then I have my on change for when the event happens. And then I have my binding. But if you want to find out what's happening with your Angular app, okay, there we go. So I must have had a typo, but we fixed our typo. And now we have the food bank location works. Okay, very, very good. Now we're back on track. All right, so back inside of our food bank location here, let's go ahead and give it some nice structure. So for the helpers app, I already have some of these things already written out to save us some time. But again, here's where the tooling with Angular comes in to help us. It's letting me know that this function, notify details change, does not exist. So this is how we define when you click on something, and we're saying, hey, this does not exist. So what should we do? Well, let's create it. So to create this, I'm going to go back in here, and we have to create this function. So let's make this function. Okay, we type that, and then inside here, this is where our body is going to go. Now, to send, so we want to say that, yeah, I've been clicked. We want to let somebody else know. So we kind of let a listener know. So we're going to emit an event. When I say emit, I mean just send it up. So if this is our component, we want to send it up from the component so the other components that are listening to it can grab it. So we want to get the event emitter, and then the output. And we have to define our output here. So we'll call our output, we'll call this output details change. And then it'll be a new event emitter. Okay, very cool. Now, when we're down here, we just want to do this dot details change dot emit. All right, and then we say this dot details. Now, what is this dot details? Well, that is, remember the input was which food bank we clicked on, so we let the person know, hey, this is the one that's being clicked on. So this is one way to solve this problem. All right, so if we look back at our application, we are almost there. Everything is looking pretty good. So we're pretty close. Let's finish it off. We're gonna do our last part. So now we've done that. The last thing for us to do is for us to make our details component. So we're going to make sure our styles are set up correctly. Our styles look great. Now we're going to go and set up. Now we'll go back to this part, to the app component. And really what we just need to do here is set up the details panel. Okay, set up the details panel. So then we'll do our helpers app, and then we'll say details. Okay, so looks good. And then if we do location list, okay, let me see something real quick. I already have that one. Okay, we should be pretty good. Okay, so now this is our details panel, which should, once we click, if something is selected, it should show our panel. So let's click on one. Okay, so our panel is working pretty good. Okay, the panel is looking pretty good. All right, that feels so great. Now let's just make sure that everything is working, and then we're really almost in the home stretch. We really have everything working that we want. Now I'm going to make sure that we have all of our structure correct. Okay, so we will make sure that we save everything. So all our files are saved. We'll save. Okay, very cool. So now we have our application. This is looking pretty good. All right, this is looking pretty good so far. And the last thing that I want to just triple check is my food bank location. I think the styles. Okay, styles are there. Make sure these are saved. Okay, very good. So now that we have our application working, so everything is working in our favor. So if you go back to our application, you can see the details for each one of these by clicking. So that was all done without, okay, so that was done without any heavy lifting. Most of it was just spending time making sure that I had everything wired up, but everything else worked. And here's the really great thing about the Angular CLI. If you've ever worked with Angular, you know we have this concept of modules. So let's look at our module. I never came into this file to do anything. The CLI set up all of the stuff for me, as well as included my components that I needed for my application. So that worked in my favor. So that way I wasn't spending time trying to remember, did I include it or not? Did I not do it, etc. Finally, I think we can do a little bit more here. We can deploy our application. And to deploy our application, we're going to use Firebase. So to use Firebase, we're going to do this. We're just going to say ng add Angular/Fire. Okay. So we're going to add, and Angular Fire is the official Firebase plugin. So you might be asking yourself, well, can I only deploy to Firebase if I'm using Angular? Answer is no. You can deploy to very many different places. For example, you can deploy to Heroku. You can deploy to GitHub Pages. You can deploy to AWS. There are so many plugins that you can add. And here's the best part. If you need to deploy to a place that we don't already have a plugin for, you can create it because the CLI allows it to be extensible. So you can do what you need to do to make this work for you, which is really exciting. All right, so if we look, so now I'm just going to select my project, which is the food bank demo. All right. Then I'm going to do the final step, ng deploy. And so, as you can see, I didn't do any other configuration. This is the power of a really great developer experience, that instead of spending time figuring out what letters or numbers or passwords or servers to go to, I let the CLI and the configuration integration work in my favor. So right now it's just doing the compilation. So it's making my build process smooth for me. So it's going to use my production build here. So once this is done, we're going to have a live application on the internet. Fingers crossed. Okay, fingers crossed. It's doing a deployment. Okay, there we go. The application is deployed live to this location. Now, if you want to see it, I'm going to share this message. Okay, so if we can get that sent out into the chat, so you can go ahead and click on it, and I'm going to do it right here with you. So I'm going to go to a new tab, Food Bank Web App, and then this is the application that we just built. And you can go here and test it yourselves as well. Okay, friends. Here's what we went over today. ng new to create or bootstrap our application. ng serve to serve our application with our local development server. ng generate was for us to build new components, but generate can go even further. You can generate components, pipes, lots of different things, not just components only. And then finally, ng deploy to get our application off of our computers and into the cloud. But there's even more that you can do with the CLI. When I say that it's supercharged, meaning it's really powerful and really rich. You can do things about schematics. You can do SSR, PWAs, internationalization, updates, testing, lintings. I mean, there's so many more things. So you're probably asking yourself, wow, Mark, thanks for coming to this talk, but what should I do next? Well, I'll tell you. Go and build great applications. We believe in you. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I've been watching the chat and comments. They really liked you, and I really liked you too, by the way. Your energy is amazing. And your presentation was amazing too. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Herhangi bir... Yeah, great t-shirt. They are saying great t-shirt, by the way. I really liked it too, by the way.
Thank you. If you think my shirt is cool, I have to show you something else.
Yeah, okay.
Here are the shoes that I'm wearing today.
Oh, okay. Whoa.
So they go with my shirt.
That looks cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it cool goes perfectly.
Oh, I know. That was intentional.
Yeah, of course it is. They really want you to come Turkey for a dev fest or any other events.
I will be honored to. I was so sad that I could only come to this virtually, but I would love to come to Turkey and like to do some events with you folks. So invite me. I'll come.
Great. All right. That's perfect. They like your shoes too.
Hopefully they like the Angular as well, but you know, the shoes are very cool.
Yeah, it's really strange. Is there any question? I don't know. Elif is saying hi to your son for us.
I will. I definitely will.
Yeah. So, okay, I guess there is no questions.
Okay,
Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Oh, no problem. If you want to see the slides or the code or anything like that, just reach out to me on Twitter, and then you folks can have access to that stuff.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right.
So again, thank you for joining us, Mark. And I hope we can see you in the future too.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it. You folks have a good day.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure for us.